Hi again, everyone. How you doing? Hope you're keeping well, or at least better than I am. Yes. Apologies in advance. Day 3 and the road to recovery from a cold. Yes, we had the students back at work last week, and of course, they brought a whole host of little nurglings with them, and I have been a little under the weather for the past few days. So I will try not to cough and splutter too much into the camera. And I hope that you'll excuse my slightly husky, froggy voice. No, it can't be helped. Anyway, I thought I would do this video anyway, because I didn't do a video last week because I was up at the weekend up at MorpCon. And we were going to film a video up there and we didn't have time. So we didn't have a video last week, so I thought I didn't want to have 2 weeks for that, so I'm going to have a go. But yeah, my apologies if I'm a little bit shaky. My second apologies, I guess, yeah, maybe apologies, to people who saw the last video and may have formed some conclusions as to just what kind of an arsehole I am, talking rudely about the White Dwarf of their childhood. I honestly don't mean any offence by it. All I can do is give you what my impressions were at the time, and my aim with the last video, as with all of these videos, has been to present what it meant to me when I was a kid, and that video, that issue being the one that turned me off Games Workshop products as a kid. I wanted to kind of explain why, and then use my sort of slightly more adult brain to try and analyse a little bit why it was. But one thing that I did that I don't normally do, because how awful is clickbait, but I thought I'd experiment, and I thought I'd put a tagline on that might attract a bit more attention, and that seemed to have worked. I mean, we've had 3,000 views and counting on that video, and of my previous videos, I think 1,000, maybe 1,200 was the biggest. So obviously the clickbaity title worked. But it's kind of rage baity as well, and I don't know how comfortable I am with it. So I'll try and steer a sort of a more positive tone, I guess, without try and title something in a way that will engage people's interest, but won't necessarily infuriate people, because I hate the way that social media does that. Right, it targets people with things that are going to make them angry, so they click it and they comment because they're angry with it, and then that feeds the algorithm, and I don't think it's good for anyone's mental health or anything else. So that was an interesting experiment, but I'm not going to pursue quite to that extent. So yes, if you clicked on my previous video and it made you really angry, yeah, I'm really sorry about that, but social experiment, and it worked. My third apologies is that we are downstairs in my house and not in the studio today. That probably doesn't make much difference to you. It doesn't make a whole lot of difference to me either. But my studio is so full at the moment. Before I dropped with the full lurgy on Sunday, I was packing the advent calendars for this year. So I've got a bunch of those ready to go, and they'll be hitting the shop at the end of this week. So if you subscribe to the Acorn, which is our monthly newsletter, there'll be more news about that, and otherwise the advent calendar will be up on the shop on Friday, hopefully, as long as I'm well enough to sit in front of a computer and upload it, which I should be. I'm feeling much better today. I'm able to sit in an upright position today. I was sort of able to do a bit of typing yesterday from a reclined position, but my head was thumping if I was in any way vertical, and that's not the case this morning, certainly. We'll see how the day goes. So I've got advent calendar debris exploded all over my studio. I've got roleplay game debris exploded because the Woods role-playing game is scheduled to come out in November. I'm hoping to be launching that at Dragon Meet at the end of November, and the submissions for the Dragon Meet RPG of the Year are coming up In fact, the closing date is the end of this week, so I was hoping to get at least a copy of the box nicely packed up and sent out there. But I'm going to have to send a PDF because there's no way that it's going to be ready in time. Sadly, I'll have to submit a PDF. Anyway, you don't need to know any of that. You just need to know that my studio is in chaos. You can buy advent calendars from Friday. Watch out for further news on the Woods role-playing game. But what we're going to do today is we're going to take, hopefully, a positive look. I'm not going to be too scathing about the 1997 White Orc. Let's try and be positive about this, but we're going to look at these two White Dwarfs that are 10 years apart. So October 1987, when I was 3, and October 1997, the month after I decided not to subscribe to White Dwarf anymore. So let's see what I was missing and take a deep dive. Okay then, here we go. Now, it probably could not be more obvious that these are two very different issues. So in 1987, Games Workshop was moving towards White Dwarf being its in-house magazine only. It was starting to dial out of the games that were not Games Workshop publications, and although there was still quite a decent amount of role-playing content, there was the Judge Dredd game, there was Rune Quest, there was Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay coming in, and I'm really excited about the arrival of the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay articles. But you were losing the content of games that were not Games Workshop games. So Traveller was out, D&D was moving out. Anything that was not currently published by Games Workshop. Games Workshop obviously had lost the D&D license at that point. I can't remember who picked it up, but D&D was no longer a Games Workshop distributed product. So that was on its way out as well, to be replaced by Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay taking the main stage. In 1997, we've got a very different look to the magazine, as we've commented, but we've got exclusively a tabletop gaming, miniature gaming magazine. There's no role-playing content here at all. Everything is miniatures, and it's also in a period of transition from I guess what I would call the Middle Hammer era, that sort of 4th edition Warhammer Fantasy Battle and 5th edition Warhammer Fantasy Battle and 2nd edition Warhammer 40,000, where everything is quite bright and colourful, to the more kind of grim, dark, nasty, grungy aesthetics of 3rd ed Warhammer 40,000 and 6th edition Fantasy Battle. But we're not quite there yet. We're still in the transition period, but things like Gorka Morka very much kind of carry the aesthetic for that move that would then happen across the broader miniatures range. Let's have a browse through our 80s White Dwarf. Apologies, this table is a bit wobbly. I don't know, because it's moving the magazine and it's moving the camera, I don't know quite how much you can see that. Hopefully it's leveling out, but to me the camera is wobbling quite a lot. It's because it's not very stable on the carpet. Anyway, not going to worry too much about that. We have some wonderful skeleton war machines here, those famous machineries of destruction. The chariot, lovely old chariot, and then of course the skull chucker, the screaming skull catapult that stayed in the range for a really long time afterwards. We've got Sean Masterson at the helm, another editor for White Dwarf. They do seem to be moving through them at a rate of knots at this point, trying to settle into what this magazine is all about. And instead of Open Box, we've now got Marginalia. And Open Box, if you've seen the previous videos or you collected the previous White Dwarfs, was a review of various products. It had become increasingly reviews of Games Workshop products, but there were still some non-Games Workshop products. Marginalia entirely looking at Games Workshop releases, and in this case, looking at Warhammer 40,000, which had its release in the last issue that we looked at last month. Also looking at Chaos Marauders, that wonderful madcap Orcs and Goblins. Excuse me, there's a cough. Orcs and Goblins card game illustrated by John Blanche, based on another game. So Stephen Hand, who came up with it, had actually ripped it off from another card game, and that was there was some dispute over that. I remember actually playing a version of this game with my grandparents, which was called, I think it was called Blackfoot. It was a very non-PC take on American indigenous First Peoples, where they all, of course, had the big feather head dresses and massive noses and massive feet, and they were in canoes, and you had to put together a canoe that had a medicine man and a chief, and then as many braves as possible, and then you led it on a war path against the other players' canoes. It works exactly the same way as Chaos Marauders, and I had never made the link between them until I played Chaos Marauders again as an adult, and it's like, oh yeah, this was the same game, just rebranded. So I don't know where that's at in the field of things. And also looking at Death Zone, the supplement for the first edition Blood Bowl. RuneQuest Paranoia. Lovely, bright, shiny mail order section there. Excuse me. Talisman Dungeon figures. The never-ending stream of figures for Talisman keeps coming out, with some really pretty swordsmen. I'm sure he got a release somewhere else. I'm sure I've seen this martial artist released. Is he released by Foundry? Have they got him? I think maybe I've seen him. Yeah, I don't know. I definitely haven't seen the Zulu somewhere else, or the Saracen, or the Swashbuckler. The Toads, I love the Toads. They're great. And then the Mercenaries. We've seen some of these painted up in the mid White Dwarfs that we're going to do next week, hopefully, if I'm better. So these as Imperial figures in the Perry's army. We have seen as well, but we'll come across those, I'm sure, a bit later on. Here's some further news. What's further news is going on? Dracula is coming out. That's another Stephen Hand production. The Dragon's Tower, the translation of Drakborgen, that Stephen Hand was translating, now is a Jervis Johnson project, and that's going to be called Dungeon Quest. So that's coming up, and I've got all of the Dungeon Quest heroes to paint up, so maybe I should do that in commemoration. We've still got a bit of non-GW content in the form of the Critical Mass book reviews. There is Thrud trying to make some money. Not enough money for ale, so he goes to a den of ill repute and gambles, and of course, being Thrud, comes away with the entire takings, because who's going to say no to Thrud? And we have this classic adventure. Who hasn't played this? Hands up if you have played any Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay at all and have not played this. I believe the current edition of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay has revised this for it, and it absolutely should. This is a classic Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay adventure. If you haven't played it, go and find someone and play it right now. It's great. Rough Night of the Three Feathers. Excuse me. Absolute inaugural Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay adventure. Yeah. A lot of goings on at the Three Feathers Inn. I'm not going to spoil it for anyone who hasn't, but yeah, there's a lot going on at the inn, lots of things to discover. And what I really love is that pretty much, if the players want to, they can go to bed early and they can sleep through all of it and wake up in the morning and be like, what has happened down here? This is an absolute state. And yes, you missed all of the fun overnight, but hopefully they don't do that, because it's far more fun if they get involved. And there's a little sub game here for arm wrestling in the pub, which is something that you have to do actually if you want to gain certain information. You have to be good at arm wrestling. Gobbledygook finds himself teleported down Wizilevard's bog to the world of Warhammer 40,000 with these impressive looking space marines with their studs and their bionic eyes and their shooty sticks. Excuse me. Yes, to be continued. And we have the first part of this mega series. So Marcus Rowland has been doing us... Oh, sorry, apologies. The cat doesn't like that I'm out of bed. He's been really happy that I've been in bed the last few days, but now he's not happy. So you have him to listen to as well. Yes, Marcus Rowland has been doing us some sterling one-shots for Judge Dredd, and now he is giving us To Live and Die in Mega City 1. I think there are 3 parts to this in the end, 3 or 4 parts, and it is a massive, sprawling adventure with dead ends and linked together bits and absolute madcap comic strip zaniness and the kind of humour that you would expect from 2000 AD. It's very, very fun and very, very confusing. But it's different from the one-shot ones, because rather than just taking a kind of day in the life of Mega City 1, this has actually got a more strung together plot. So this feels like a storyline that would run a number of progs, which in fact is how it's designed. This is kind of prog 1 of several, and in fact that's actually how it's there you go, that's actually how it's billed. So you can imagine this running as a Dredd comic strip, and it's directly related to an existing Dredd comic strip. It has tie-ins to the Judge Child story arc, which was discussed in a previous issue of White Dwarf, and this kind of develops on some of those themes of time traveling and paradoxes and all kinds of very confusing things to tie your players' heads in knots. Excellent fun, and we leave the intrepid judges in a little bit of trouble, facing some giant enzyme blobs that have escaped from a kind of chemical factory, where there's been a leak and an explosion, and it's created these kind of semi-sentient blobs, and they've got that to deal with. And at the very last minute, there is supposed to be a rescue ship that arrives, but they kind of see it in the distance, skydiving towards one of the blobs and being absorbed, and that's kind of where this cliffhanger ends. So more on that in the next issue. Some awesome command groups here. Really nice to see some very classic figures. There's obviously the Wood Elves. There's some very long-standing members of the Wood Elf range here. Again with the Skaven, very familiar figures, and then 2 at least of the goblins here from the Goblinoids combat card deck. The Dark Elves at this point seem to be blue. I guess that's a very D&D thing. I don't know if that was a D&D thing at the time. But yeah, not something that I remember seeing Heavy Metal or Studio figures painted up with blue Dark Elves. So yeah, I'm not sure why they made that decision, but they clearly did. Here are some jobs for people to do in Call of Cthulhu, along with the ways that they might tie into the plot to give you particular leads or other particular advantages. We've got some extra rules for Blockmania and Megamania. some more awesome Citadel miniatures of the time, including the original Space Elf release here with even pointier, more sloped back helmets, the Savage Orc range, and the big fighters range with such wonderful names as Sir Forest of Dean, Sir Sit-on Defence, Sir Richard the Righteous Jethro, Sir Nord of Cleethorpes, Sir Heatov the Knight, Sir Philip of Umbridge, Sir Peace de Resistance, Sir Loxley Barrett, Squire Grundy, and Sir Nigel of Boardchester. Very fun names. And the militia to go with them: Polgy, Bolg, Jan the Slar, Niggle, Sergeant Allard, Darrett, Jonesy, Tom, Trud, Dimmitt, Leaf, Clud, Malin, One Eye, Timmet, Grace, Bloggin, Critch, Captain Enzel, Old Sam, Blod, Billy, Wiggle, and Gut Bucket. There you go. Perfect names for the militia. In case you wanted to know, the Savage Orcs names are Grobble, Chug, Brug, Gobble, another Gobble, no, Grobble and Gobble, Agrat, Slith, Gat, Snorts, Pork, Chundi, Brag, Crack, Grob, Bolt, Aract, Garn, Zag, and Slobble. And the Eldar names are Belguy, Strongwill, Aju, Starborn, Gayville, Quickshadow, Male, Nightwing, Alessio, Wildfire, Ingen, Keentongue, Kado, Sharpeye, Aratolia, Lightfoot, Yoan, Fireheart, Urbic, Trueshot, Catra, Darkfight, and Kern, Proudbrow. So there you are. Now you know. We have got a Warhammer 40,000 scenario, Skirmish on Rinsworld, the Battle of Jadebury Hill, and this has been fought at Bring Out Your Lead. This was really nice to see it Bring Out Your Lead. It was a really fun game, and this is designed as a companion to the Battle at the Farm, the scenario from the Rogue Trader rulebook. And you can see lots of 2000 AD crossovers in here. So there's an under-zoom that leads to the city. The Marines are camped on Jadebury Hill and have mined the underzoom to try and stop the Orcs from being able to make it into the city. The Orcs have got to try and get through down the underzoom, across the Pacamac River and into the city to establish a beachhead on the other side. Space Dwarfs, again, some of the Citadel Combat Cards figures here with different names, but this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, yeah, that might be it. Maybe that guy just from a different angle. Anyway, those are in the Space War Combat Cards sets, and here's some of those Space Elves painted up with different names. Oh no, maybe not with different names. Kern Proudbrow is there. Let's see if he's got the same. Kern Proudbrow, yes, that's the same name. Gade Hill Quickshadow. Gade Hill Quickshadow. Yeah, well, there you go. They were at least consistent naming between pages of White Dwarf. That's I should give them more credit, really. So here's the player's briefs, and this is designed to be played as a GM scenario. So there's some hidden stuff and some stuff that players have to tell the GM their intentions in order to make sure that it comes off. We've got another heavy metal article from John Blanche and Rick Priestley. In this case, looking at assembling multi-part figures. After all, we've got the RTB Space Marine pack out, and here's some of the many things that you can do with it, and here are some of the many things that many people have done with it, including some absolutely mad conversions. So these were, let's see, so these are Nick Bibby's Dark Angel Space Marines. Dark Angels at this point in black rather than, excuse me, in dark green as standard. Here's some close-up of Nick Bibby's converted Space Marines. Here's those Crimson Fists from the box cover. And I think, is it Ali Morrison? Let's see. No, it's Dave Andrews. Of course, it's Dave Andrews. Dave Andrews' crazy conversions here with like a Dalek body and a massive propeller on the back and a big shield and an orc head and a bike before there were bikes readily available, and some kind of strange lasery needle rifle and a lion guy with a missile launcher, all very different takes on Space Marines to what the Space Marines ended up being, which is fun and good to see. So this was very much about kit bashing before there were lots of kits to play with. So lots of airfix bits, lots of bits sourced from lots of different places to convert your plastic figures, because obviously it's much easier to convert a plastic figure than a metal figure, and they're much cheaper. So here's a look at some stuff that was cut from the newest Games Workshop edition of RuneQuest. The Colosseum, Monster Colosseum, a collection of creatures and rules for arena combat and chariot racing. So here they are presented so that you can play them with the new edition of RuneQuest. This is Blood Bowl, Bloody Blood Bowl, and the first instance of chainsaws in Blood Bowl. And at this point, chainsaws are an exclusively undead thing. There's one particular Decker's Decomposing Decimators, one particular undead team that use chainsaws, and that is it. And here's the rules of how they work, along with rules for pit traps. And of course, the chainsaws didn't stop there. They became adopted into other teams later on, but this was the first instance of an entirely skeleton team using chainsaws, and a team that nobody else really wanted to play against because they were using chainsaws. But apparently the referees didn't feel like they could say that's not in the spirit of the rules, because they ended up facing skeletons with chainsaws. So there we are. That is White Dwarf 94, October 1987. And now we're going to change to something radically different. Okay, here we go. Very colourful, we'll say that for it. It's nice and vibrant, isn't it? Definitely eye-catching. And this is suitably chaotic, I think, because the idea of this is it's a Gorka Morka launch issue. The Orcs have taken over White Dwarf, so I feel like the chaoticness of it doesn't matter so much in this issue, because it's the Orcs who are in charge. But also, I mean, maybe we'll find out as we go through, I feel like they have reined in a bit. I feel like maybe they got some feedback on the last issue and saying, guys, you got a little bit too carried away with all the digital layout stuff that you can now do. Let's just dial it back a little bit and make sure people can actually read the magazine. So there's still lots of content in here, and I do feel like maybe I was a little bit harsh as a kid to say, oh, I'm not reading White Dwarf anymore. There were other reasons for not reading White Dwarf anymore at the time. But I missed a few things here. So these classic Bretonnian Knights that were on a made-to-order, I think, when Old World came out with them, or were they general release? I can't remember. Anyway, they popped up and they're like, oh, these classic Bretonnian Knights. I was like, I don't remember ever seeing them. Well, I don't remember ever seeing them because they were in the issue after I stopped collecting White Dwarf. So there you go. That's why I didn't see them. But they're pretty. They're very much along the same kind of vein as the Warhammer Quest Bretonnian Knight, which is obviously very cool. Here is that big Gorka Morka release. So last month, I should say, we took a look at some of the fluff behind Gorka Morka, and this time we're going to have a look at some of the rules in Gorka Morka and the contents of the box, which is this, with this cool fort, which looks absolutely nothing like the fort from Waterworld, right? That's definitely not in any way based on the fort from Waterworld, but set in the desert rather than in the ocean. And we're talking about plastic conversions again, because that's one of the things that Gorka Morka was really good for, on the vehicle front and also on the model front. Now, I'm not a particular fan of the kind of like Gorilla Orc style here, where they're really muscled and sort of low slung heads. I do prefer the older orcs, which were a bit leaner and gnarlier, with sort of more elongated heads and more variation between them. But this is the style that GW went for, and they made it so that you could hack them around, which was part of the problem I felt with Necromunda, where you had these really beautiful sculpted figures, but you were also supposed to be doing weapon swaps and things on them, and a lot of the guns were in against the body, and it was really hard to swap them over. Well, Gorka Morka read those design notes and has done something about it so that you can customize your team as you want to. Things like this, for example. And of course, there were a lot of 40k plastic kits around at this time, and metal accessory kits as well. So you had plenty of scope for being able to play around with your trucks. And then here we've got a battle report. Now, I don't actually feel like this really does Gorka Morka much justice. I get they're going for battle reports in this era of White Dwarf that are very much like, here's how you can see the people playing the game, rather than the posed photographs of the stages of the battle that we had been seeing. And there's some of that as well, particularly with the epic games. There's some of that as well. But with things like this, they're very much like, we want people to be able to see the people playing the game, rather than just these polished shots. And that makes sense. But these photographs look like they've been taken on a very early digital camera, which they probably have. So they look like the kind of reference snaps you might get for setting up a proper shot later on, which again, they probably are. But they don't really sell the models or the terrain to its best ability. They're a little bit kind of washed out, a little bit faded. But I guess it kind of works with the flow, and it helps to sort of familiarize yourself with the people playing the game and see that they're having fun and moving stuff. So that's okay. That works. I just think that they're such fun models. It would be nice to have some sort of polished shots of them as well, like these, where you get more of a sense of the fight. Here's a look at building the free watchtower that came in here. Free card start, of course, and this rather cool Gorka Morka watchtower. Andy Kettlewell takes you through how to collect your mob and quickly paint your mob using the system that they were going for at the time, which had this kind of quite bright green skin tone with a kind of darker green underside. It doesn't, I don't know, I don't think this colour combination works particularly well, but that's just me. I think the undergreen is too saturated and not dark enough in these cases, but that's just my personal opinion, obviously, and personal opinions are what you make of them. Some people love it for nostalgia's sake or anything else. We're still looking at Forskinson's Island. That's still not over yet. Still going. But drawing to its conclusion. And then we have the Eldar for Epic 40,000. And we get to see the hosts in all their wonderful colours. And this is okay, by the way. Page layout, I mean, I know it's kind of boxy and all over the place, but I feel like at least these pictures are big enough so that you can see them. I mean, these are probably the actual size of these Epic miniatures. So no harm in showing them at that size, showing how nicely painted they are for the size. And it's not too difficult to navigate your way around. There's not too much text. It's mostly a visual page in this case. Even when there is quite a bit of text, the flow is quite easy. So I do feel like they've dialed back the layout a little bit from its previous chaotic state. The detachment cards, which I believe caused some issues for Epic 40,000 players who are used to the kind of force organisation cards that were previously such an intrinsic part of Epic. And then we look at Fate cards in Epic 40,000, some more free card stock in this month's issue. Grand reopenings and free packs and things. Do Games Workshop stores still do grand events and sales and things? I don't know. Don't know how and where they would advertise. Probably still in White Dwarf, right? And this is nice. So looking at some Imperial Guard battalions from various people. This is Paul Thomas's Imperial Guard army, and it's pretty huge, as you can see, and it's got this nice big spread with some detailed inserts of some character figures, and then on the following pages we've got some really nice studio shots of various regiments from other people's armies, and I feel like this is a lovely way of looking at stuff. This is a little bit cramped, but again, you can see the size of the forces here. Now, interesting. There's do you remember in a previous issue there was Nork Dedog, the giant Ogrin character. I don't know if you remember. He was based on an older Citadel giant. Well, there are in some of these shots, and I'm not going to be able to find them now, am I? There are in some of these shots some figures. So there's one. You can see him, and there's one there that look very similar. They're based around the Marauder, is it the MB series giant ogres? But yeah, very, very similar. So I don't know if these come from the same period, or they predate Nork Dedog, or they were inspired by Nork Dedog. I can't even remember how far away we looked at him. But yeah, nice to see some sort of very similar but significantly different individual figures popping up there along similar lines, people being inspired by other people's conversion projects. Here's a look on one of these crazy 4-column layouts at the adventures of this Dark Elf army, which at least gets a full page spread. Nicely painted Dark Elf army and its adventures on Thorskinson's Island. Air superiority in Epic 40,000. We've looked at the Eldar, now we're going to look at lots of different flyers in Epic 40,000. And then we're in the catalogue pages, and the catalogue pages are you can this is fun as well. You can it's an army deal based on one of the Imperial Guard armies that we saw, so that's nice. If you're inspired by his force, you can pick up a starter set at a discount. We've got some Bretonnian forces. We've got Katashan Jungle Fighters. Of course, we've got Imperial Guard, right? Space Marine Scouts. Lots of Epic Eldar, of course. It being the Epic Eldar launch. It's the Gorka Morka metals here. But even with the metals, right, you've got separate arms, separate heads, separate weapon sprues, so that you can cut them around and build them to your heart's content. Obviously built with customization in mind, so having these separate arms that you can easily cut the weapons off. These less easy, but some very easy cut lines there across some of these bolters to replace with other bits and pieces. The basic war truck sprue and the biker sprue, the old plastic orc bike, not even that old at this point, probably only about 6 months old at this point, maybe a bit older than that, with extra metal bits to bring the design of the rider more in line with the current style of Gorka Morka Orcs by Brian Nelson. And there we have it. They should have used super grippers. So there we go, 2 very different White Dwarfs, but both a lot of fun. Neither of them dead magazines yet. Plenty of content in both of them. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you'll join me for next week. Fingers crossed, I'm feeling better by next week, when we will do the mid-90s White Dwarf, which I'm looking forward to. See you then.